Go recording. All right. How are we doing, Rebecca? Good? I posted the textbook chapters. Everybody, I posted textbook chapters on Google Classroom. I know for some students at home, it wouldn't work. I think it's just because the website that I have, I think Content Keeper was blocking using my Drive folder. So I posted the textbook chapters there on Google Classroom. It's under general information, and you should be able to access it through Google Classroom now. Can everybody do that? I think they can. Brewster, can you do that? So go to general information under classwork. So this time there should be no issues trying to access the textbook at home then. So Rebecca, maybe that's the homework for tonight. Maybe check out to see if it works for you. I hope so. I mean, I don't know other way to do it now. Do you see it? The textbook chapters? Or the textbook, I think it is. Yeah. And then you access it. I think it's coming up here. It's like a PDF. It's loading yet. Oh boy. It's a big PDF, huh? Oh, Friday. Remember, we have Alex and Maria. So hopefully Alex as well. She's absent today. Okay. Yeah. So remember Friday current events. Okay. You working? Nice. Good. That's what I like to see. All right. So remember too, career paths and psych presentations. That's what we're going to be doing on Friday. Okay. So I don't know if you saw as well. I posted the APA citation for you on Google Classroom. So if you're finding something that, let's say, you gather information for a career path and you need to cite the information, APA is just posted now on Google Classroom. It's under general information. I think it just says APA citation on it. All right? You guys got that? Okay. Is there any questions with that? No? So, Bellringer for today. Describe the origins of psychology. That was discussed yesterday in class. So we went over some of the origins of psychology yesterday. So where it came about. Pretty much the history. I'll give you some time to work on that. So describe the origins of psychology that was discussed yesterday in class. See if everybody at home can see it. I think so. Yep. Recording, presenting. Good. All right, so describe the origins of psychology. That was discussed yesterday in class. So we started off with Greek, right? Ancient Greece. What did they state? TC, go ahead.
They divided the mind and body into
Okay. Yeah. So they're trying to depict and break away from that idea that the Greek gods control everything that we do. That we actually can think and process information. And we can acknowledge perceptions and sensations of the world around us. Okay. That we shouldn't just base our whole life based off of conceptions and beliefs that the gods control our everyday lives and motives. Right. Okay. Good job. So that kind of expresses a little bit of nature versus nurture. You guys remember what that was? We talked about that the first day of class, or no, second day of class. What is nature versus nurture? Let's describe that for me real quick. Rooster, go ahead.
Nature is like what you're born with, and what nurture is what you can have to.
Yeah, good job. So nature, right? These instinctive personalities, characteristics that we're just born with these certain types of traits, right? Language, we didn't have to learn it. Right? We're just born with it. Okay, good. And then nurture is how we learn over time, how we just bridge these connections by relationships, how we understand it through learning. Okay, so nature versus nurture. This concept was first derived here with ancient Greek and Roman culture. Okay, is there any questions on that, guys? Good. Okay, so the next part here we talked about Copernicus and Galileo. All right, what were the origins of psychology there? What did they bring to the table with the origins of psych? Katie?
Observations.
Yeah, observations, right? Describe their observations a little bit.
So basically, Copernicus was like, I don't think that the Earth is like the center of the universe, and that would basically like confirm that.
Yeah, so Copernicus was saying that the Earth was the center, right? Or was he not saying that?
He was saying that it was not.
Okay, good. And then Galileo, how did he prove that it was not?
Didn't he like use like a telescope or something?
Yeah.
He was, like watching and studying the sky for a while and like the movement of the stars.
Yeah, good job. So he used observation, right? He used experimentation to try to prove this theory of that the Earth was not the center of the solar system, and the universe, right? So using observation, using experimentation, right? The scientific method was being applied there by observation and going through different experimental measures to understand and depict that the Earth is not the center of the universe. Okay, we gravitate towards and orbit around the sun. Okay, and that the Earth is not the center of the universe. All right, good. And then Descartes, Rene. What did Rene say? I like saying that. Rene say. What did Rene say? Rebecca?
Believed in like dualism, the connection of the body and the mind.
Yeah, good job. So dualism is stating what? What is dualism? Yeah, good job. So there for a while, people thought the body acted on its own, that the mind actually didn't control characteristic behaviors and reflexes, movements, okay, that they acted separately. But Descartes said that, dualism, the belief that the mind and the body work together, okay, that this is not a separate process, that the body kind of just does its own thing and the mind does its own thing. The mind controls what the body can do, reflexes, different types of sensation, okay, when we feel and touch things, okay, that it's all connected. All right, good job. And I believe that was it, right? Yeah, so we're going to talk today about historical approaches. So we're going to get into functionalism, structuralism, okay, assault psychology a little bit, and then we'll move on tomorrow with contemporary approaches. So historical approaches we're going to discuss today, which I'll have a short reading for you, and then we'll go over it. We'll discuss it in class. But for now, I'll let you guys work on vocab. I'm thinking next week sometime we'll have a quiz. So that means vocab will be due at that certain time. Okay, so remember, do the bottom section as well, the important psychologists, okay, different approaches that are labeled underneath the vocab. Is there any questions, guys? Okay. So let you work on a vocab for about how about 3 to 4 minutes, maybe 5, and then we'll move on. Okay, I'll give you a couple more minutes to finish up here. We'll move on. All right. So again, guys, I posted the textbook on Google Classroom for you. For those at home had an issue, and I think this is resolving the issue. I just posted as a PDF on Google Classroom, so you should be able to access it at home, and content keepers shouldn't block it. All right, also, here's the APA citation I posted. Here is the information on how to cite different type of articles, books, maybe it's a website, okay? It's right under general information in classwork. So general information, you go to APA citation, there it is. Not too bad. Someone turned it in. I don't know how they turned that in. All right, but anyway, there it is. All right, and then the textbook right here. Okay, it's just a material. It's a PDF. Okay, you can just scroll down. It's an easier way to maybe get to the textbook. I think the website works here. You can access it here at school, but when you're at home, I guess it's a little harder to access. So you can just go to Google Classroom, and there it's posted. So we're going to go to page 15, at the bottom of 15. Let me see what it is on the PDF. Yep, here it is. So it is 27. So we're going to start here at historical approaches. I like you guys to read structuralism. Okay, functionalism. All right, I like you to read inheritable traits too as well. I mean, that kind of goes along with what we're talking about with historical approaches. And then finally, gestalt psychology. You're going to finish up here at the bottom of 17. So just stop right after you read gestalt psychology. So I'll give you some time to do that. It shouldn't take you too long. And then finish up here after gestalt psychology. All right, there you go. We'll discuss it. We'll go over it. I'll give you some time to work on your career paths. What's up, buddy?
We're gonna go to the bathroom.
Yeah, you finish your reading?
Yeah.
Nice. Okay. All right, guys, I'll give you another minute here to finish up, and we'll move on. Buddy. All right, so let's go over this real quick, guys. So what do you think of Galton's belief in inheritable traits? Sounds a lot like someone else in history we know of, and not a very good guy. We'll get to that here soon, though. So modern psychology rooted in history. Okay, so modern psychology developed from several conflicting ideas, including structuralism, functionalism, gestalt psychology, and we'll get to the last two later. Okay, we'll talk about those maybe a little bit more tomorrow. All right, but for now, I just want to talk about structuralism, functionalism, and then gestalt psychology. Okay, and then with that, the inheritable traits. Maybe have a little discussion on that here soon. All right, structuralism, Wilhelm Wundt. Okay, Wilhelm Wundt. I know the W's, they sound like V's, right? So Wilhelm Wundt was considered the father of psychology because he was trying to come up with an idea of how we can apply psychology to a scientific method, right? Okay, we want to try to have some sort of principles that we can follow, and we can derive this as a social science. Okay? So we have physics, like the fundamental laws. Okay, chemistry has the periodic table. Wilhelm Wundt tried to prove that psychology could have a way of studying this science and set standards or any type of, I guess you could say, just any type of trademark, right, to the science. Okay, that's what he was trying to establish. So Tishner was one of his most famous, I guess you could say he's one of his students who later would advance the forms of psychology, which we'll discuss here soon, with introspection. Right, so Wilhelm Wundt, again, he was trying to set the stage for sciences, for psychology, to try to prove it as a science, set a table or certain principles that psychology can follow to understand it as a natural science, as a science that we can study through the scientific method and establish these principles and these methods to this social science. All right, so famous thing that Wilhelm Wundt came up with, structuralism here, so the basic structures of psychology. His goal was to try to understand how people performed and people thought, okay, different perceptions based off stimulus, right? So he reported a lot of his experiments in a laboratory. So what's the problem with that? So yeah, it's great to have these experiments in a laboratory. That's awesome. But what are some issues that people might have problems with these studies in the laboratory? What do you think? What problems would other psychologists or, let's say, scientists would have an issue with performing all your experiments in a laboratory? What do you think, Alex? It's not natural, right? Okay, good. You might have some biases. You might have some inaccuracies depending on what you're trying to study. So his structural approach was trying to base off a structure, based off principles of thoughts and perceptions. Okay, so he would oftentimes sit a person down, and he would play different types of sounds. Okay, and he would have the person that he's trying to experiment on depict the sounds and see if he could hear it, a faint noise or a loud noise, and just tell him what, or ask the person what they thought when they heard that certain sound. Do you guys ever do a hearing test? Obviously, a lot of you probably all did. With the hearing test, sometimes I'm sitting there listening to it. It's like, okay, raise your hand when you hear the sound. I'm sitting there waiting. I'm like, I don't know if I heard it or not, but I'm going to raise my hand because I think I've heard it, right? Does that happen to many of you? It happens for me anyway. When I'm doing the hearing test and I'm just waiting for it, like, I don't know if I heard it or not, but I'm going to raise my hand because I think I heard it. That's another problem with introspection and structuralism that many psychologists and scientists had an issue with. Are all people's perceptions different than others? Yeah, right? This could easily be an example with taste. Does everybody like Pizza Hut pizza in here? I love it, but Katie, you're shaking your head no, right? Okay, so that's another issue with structuralism. He's trying to base all these principles, all these guidelines off of thoughts and perceptions. And let's face it, everybody's different, okay? Everybody's different. There's a lot of issues when it comes to, or differences when it comes to perception and sensation. And that's a lot of his studies have been done with perception and sensation. What comes to mind? What are you thinking of when you hear this sound or when you smell this certain thing? Okay. Obviously, with different people, there's a lot of differences with that. All right. Also, memories. Okay, memories. So he would oftentimes try to do a test and see what people would come up with. Do you have a faint memory of this certain noise or this certain picture? And many people might have differences depending on what that picture might be. It might be a scary movie like Halloween. Okay, Michael Myers. You guys know him? Yeah. So they see the mask on it. It's like, you know what? I like that movie a lot. Okay, I like horror movies. But for someone else, it's like, oh my gosh, when I was a kid, I saw that. I was scared to death about it. Okay, I didn't even want to go to bed at night because of it. So these differences in memories, thoughts, emotions cause issues with his structural approach. Okay, well, which I talked about here with the critics. Okay, of Wilhelm Wundt and structuralism. Sorry about that. I should have moved to the next slide. All right, so William James, okay, we're going to talk about him with the functionalist approach. Okay, he believed that psychology should be looked at a function and not just a structure. And we just can't study people's thoughts and perceptions of certain items. Okay, that can't be just the principles of psychology. Psychology is just a little bit more advanced than that. Okay, we need to see how we can adapt and live in our environment. And that's what William James is about to talk about here when we get to functionalism. Is there any questions on structuralism? I know I went through it pretty quick. So structuralism, again, basic structures of psychology. Wilhelm Wundt is trying to set a certain principles, standards to the science, to psychology. Right? And that's how he performed a lot of his experiments in a laboratory, giving certain stimulus and see how people would react to it. Problems with it, people react in different ways. Okay, there's differences in perceptions depending on the person, and it even could be the day. Right? We might have an acquired taste over time of certain things that might change. I know with me and onions and mushrooms, I never liked them when I was little, but now all of a sudden I love them. We put them on anything. Okay, so obviously perceptions change over time as well, which structuralism could have some issues with. All right, so William James and functionalism. You guys good? Can I move on here? Okay, so functionalism, we're going to skip through this here. Functionalism is a theory emphasized on functions of consciousness and ways of consciousness, helps people adapt to their environment. Okay, so the belief of the survival of the fittest, the evolutionary theory that Darwin came up with. Many of these psychologists are trying to base this off principles off of mind, how we think, how we react in certain situations, how we try to adapt in our natural environment. And William James, the father of psychology in the United States, Okay, he's the first person to open up this new approach to psychology in the U.S. He was trying to think of, you know what, we shouldn't just base our beliefs of psychology in a laboratory. We need to expand it to everyday life. Right? We need to have some sort of function to psychology. Right? How we adapt and live in our environment. Okay, how we build relationships with people in our natural setting. Okay, so William James, his biggest critique with Wilhelm Wundt was like, listen, psychology is an everyday aspect. It's not just performed in a laboratory. It's in our environment and our everyday interactions with people, friends, okay, family, how we try to survive in our own environment. So when you think of functionalism, think of how we're using this as an evolutionary theory based off of Darwin and his thoughts on natural selection, okay? How we're trying to adapt, how we're trying to advance in our current environment. That kind of bases off the inheritable traits that you just read within your book. Galton had a different idea, an approach to psychology where he's like, you know what? The strongest will survive. We need to try to weed out society of its inaccuracies and faults. Okay, if there's problems or and issues in the world, natural selection will take its toll. Okay, the strongest will survive. And we need to try to forget about some of the less desirable people, okay, less desirable actions or traits that they might have. We need to try to weed that out in order to try to perform a great society. Sounds a lot like the Nazi ideology, doesn't it? I think so. But anyway, functionalism based off basic functions, natural selection, how we react and interact with people in our everyday setting. Okay, William James with functionalism, he's trying to base the functions of psychology in our everyday lifestyle. Okay, again, natural selection. We're trying to evolve. We're trying to survive in our environment. Okay? All right. This is pretty much what I stated already. Okay, William James again, basing it off of natural setting. Okay, we should have observable events in our natural setting, not just in the laboratory. One critique with functionalism is that you really can't test it, right? Yes, you can maybe see traits over time with people and how that kind of goes to their offspring, but for the most part, you can't really test this study. Okay? And that's why many people will say this approach is false, or they don't really believe in it too much. Okay, it's really hard to prove it as a science, but for the most part, this approach really took hold, especially with social Darwinism in the world right after World War One. Okay. Many of these countries are competing against each other and trying to have their sole dominance in the world. Okay, survival of the fittest. Does that make sense, guys? You see how it relates to natural selection and the evolutionary theory? Okay. All right, last approach, real quick, assault psychology. Real simple, guys. We're not just seeing items as a whole, but we're seeing its individual parts, okay? So we see certain items as a whole, but we recognize its individual parts. So TC, what is this thing right here that I'm rolling out? What's this? A chair, right? Okay, good, a chair. Well, what else is involved with this chair? What's that? The rolling things? What's a rolling thing? The wheels, yeah. Okay, so we see wheels. We see a headrest. Right, we see the back support here. Okay, we see the legs of the chair. See the armrests. Okay, assault psychology, we're seeing it as a whole. That's how you saw it, a chair. Right? That's a great example. That's a great explanation of what this thing is. But also, we got to understand that there's wheels to it. There's legs. There's armrests. There's a headrest, the back, so on and so forth. Okay, so these items that we look at, we're not just recognizing as just a chair. We can see different parts of it, different elements that make up that chair, make up that certain thing. Okay, it might be an automobile. Obviously, we see wheels on the automobile, lights, okay? We might see a windshield, right? There's different parts that we can recognize and understand that's a car. Yeah, that's a car, okay? You guys understand that? Okay. Result psychology is used as an approach, this historical approach, more and more based off of these new contemporary approaches that we're going to learn about tomorrow, okay? So functionalism, structuralism, yeah, they're great approaches. They're the beginnings of psychology as a study of a social science, but result psychology is the one that really kicks off the most. Okay. So we're trying to depict the whole is different from the sum of its parts. So when you see this picture, what do you see? What do you see? An elephant? Yeah, an elephant, right? What's that elephant made up of? Letters? Okay, what letters? All right, so you noticed it, right? So you noticed it. Some students are just like, oh yeah, just see an elephant head. It's just X's. But there's T's, there's O's, there's circles, or whatever you want to say, involved with that elephant. Some people said it looks like a parrot. Like a parrot. So they said this is the tail, and this is the feather, or the wings coming down, and then the parrot head. But I was just like, I don't know. That's what I see, an elephant more. That's what I see. But consult psychology, again, guys, is the whole is different from the sum of its parts. Again, with this chair, you know, this isn't a big wheel, okay, but there's wheels that make up this chair. Okay, this isn't just a headrest, but the sum of its part, this headrest, is involved with how this chair is made and how this chair is visualized. Okay. Is there any questions on that, guys? No? We'll go over the 6 design principles tomorrow. I'm running out of time. Okay. And we'll get on to contemporary approaches then. Is there any questions on that, guys? So remember, structuralism, Wilhelm Wundt, right? Functionalism, William James, and how he was trying to say, listen, we need to break apart from the laboratory. Everybody's perception is a little bit different than ours. Okay. And how we need to try to focus on how we live in our certain environment, how we adapt. And then result psychology, okay, how we visualize things as a whole, but the sum of its parts might be a little bit different. Okay. Any questions, guys? Remember, historical approaches. Remember, career paths and psych, that is due Friday. Presentations are Friday.